morning, students. Today's topic is some basic concepts of macroeconomy. So firstly, what are goods? So as we know, countless number of goods are produced and consumed in the economy, like shoes, shirt, machines, etc. And different goods show different characteristics, and on that basis goods can be classified into two parts. First one is final goods and intermediate goods. Second one is consumption goods and capital goods. So first one is final goods. Final goods are those goods which have crossed the boundary line of production and are ready for use by their final use. So here the goods have crossed the boundary line means no value can be added in these kinds of goods, and final goods are again classified into two parts: final consumer goods and final producer goods. Final consumer goods are finally purchased by the end users for the satisfaction of their wants. Final producer goods are finally purchased by the producer and are generally used as fixed assets in the process of production. And the expenditure on final consumer good is known as consumption expenditure, and expenditure on final producer good will be termed as a investment expenditure. So expenditure on final good will be sum total of consumption expenditure and investment expenditure. Next one is intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are those goods which have not yet crossed the boundary line of production. Means there is some sort of value still to be added in these goods, and these are not yet ready for the purchase or for the consumption by final user. Intermediate goods are those goods which are purchased by one firm from another firm as raw material or as goods for resale. So here the question arises, what are intermediate goods and what are final goods? The basic difference between intermediate and final goods lies within their use. Same good can be final good also, and same good can be intermediate good also. It only depends upon the use of those goods. Like salt can be intermediate goods as well as final good. When salt is used by household for its consumption, then salt is a final consumer good. But when the salt is used by a bakery shop, by the owner of bakery shop for the purpose of making biscuits, then salt is an intermediate good. So the same good can also be a final good or intermediate good. The distinction depends upon the end use of goods only. Next is the difference between intermediate goods and final goods. Intermediate goods remains within the boundary line of production, means they are not ready for the use by their final users, whereas final goods are outside the boundary line of production and are ready for use by their final users. Second one is intermediate goods may be used as raw material for the production of other goods during the accounting year, but final goods are not used as raw material for the production of other goods. Intermediate goods may be resold by the firms for profit during the accounting year. These goods, final goods, are not resold by the firm for profit during the accounting year. Intermediate goods are those goods in which value is yet to be added to these goods, whereas final goods are those goods in which there is no further value addition will take place. And expenditure on intermediate good is termed as intermediate consumption, whereas expenditure on final good will be termed as final expenditure. Intermediate goods will not be included when we calculate national product or national income, whereas the final goods will be considered for the purpose of national income calculation. So these were the basic different points between intermediate goods and final goods. And the next topic is consumption goods or consumer goods. So consumption goods are those goods which are directly used for the satisfaction of human wants, like ice cream, milks, as used by households. So consumption goods can be further classified into different categories like durable goods, semi-durable goods, non-durable goods, or services. First one is durable goods. Durable goods are those goods which can be used for several years and are of relatively high value, like washing machines, radio, TV, etc. Next is semi-durable goods. Semi-durable goods are those goods which can be used for a period of more than 1 year, but the lifespan of these goods will be shorter than that of durable consumption goods, like clothes, furniture, etc. Next is non-durable or single-use consumption goods. Non-durable goods are those goods which are used up in a single act of consumption. Means the lifespan of these items is generally for few days, like bread, domestic LPG, milk, petrol are some of the examples of non-durable goods. And then last one is non-material goods or service goods. Services are those non-material goods which are directly satisfy human wants, like banking services, insurance services, services of doctor, lawyer, domestic servants. These are the examples of services. Next is capital goods. Capital goods are fixed assets of the producer, like building, plant and machinery, furniture. These goods are used by the producer either for replacement of capital stock or for addition to the capital stock. Capital goods are fixed assets of the producer, and only those fixed assets of the producer are taken as capital goods which are of high value. And also capital goods involve depreciation. Depreciation means gradual decrease in the value of asset due to its use or some other reasons. Next is all capital goods are producer goods, but all producer goods are not capital goods. Producer goods are those goods which are used in the production of other goods, like goods used as raw material by the producer and goods used as fixed assets by the producer. Unlike fixed assets of the producer, goods used as raw material are non-durable use goods. Means these are single usable goods. The same wood cannot be used repeatedly for the manufacturing of furniture, but the same fixed asset can be used for the production of many more goods. So due to this reason, all capital goods are producer goods, but all producer goods are not treated as a capital goods. Next is the difference between consumption goods and capital goods. So consumption goods leads to direct satisfaction of human wants. Means these goods are used by end consumers for the satisfaction of their demands, whereas capital goods do not lead to direct satisfaction of human wants. Means they are not directly used by the end and consumers. Consumption goods are consumed by the household when purchased, whereas capital goods are not consumed by the household. Instead, these goods are used by the producer for the production of other commodities. And expenditure on consumption goods will be termed as consumption expenditure, and expenditure on capital good will be treated as an investment expenditure. Higher production of consumption goods will lead to higher level of welfare of the people. It helps to raise the quality of life, or it helps to raise the standard of living of people. And higher production of capital goods lead to higher production capacity in the economy. Means with higher production of capital goods, the output of the economy will increases, and with the increase in output, the GDP rate of economy also increases. So these were the differentiation points between consumption goods and capital goods. Next is concept and components of consumption expenditure. Consumption expenditure refers to the aggregate consumption expenditure in the economy. So basically, household, government and NGOs are the main persons who consume goods. Household buy goods for the satisfaction of their wants, whereas government purchase these consumer goods for distribution among defense forces, for midday meals in government schools and for other purposes, whereas non-profit organizations purchase consumer goods for charity purposes. So the expenditure on all these consumer goods by households, by government and by NGOs, by adding all these expenditure, we will get the estimation of total consumption expenditure in the economy. So these were the components of consumption expenditure. And the next topic is concept and components of investment. So what is investment? It refers to increase in the stock of capital. So change in stock of capital will also be termed as a capital formation. So accordingly, investment is also defined as capital formation. So investment has two components. First one is fixed investment and second one is inventory investment. Fixed investment refers to increase in the stock of fixed assets of the producer during an accounting year. It implies the increase in the stock of capital in terms of fixed assets, which are repeatedly used in the process of production for several years. So what is the importance of fixed investment? Fixed investments raise the production capacity of the producers, and by raising production capacity, fixed investments leads to higher level of output in the economy, and higher level of output will lead to higher rate of economic growth, popularly known as a GDP growth rate. And inventory investment means at a particular point of time, producer holds the stock of raw material, work in progress and finished good. This is known as inventory stock. So change in inventory stock during an accounting year will be termed as inventory investment. So what is the importance of inventory investment? Inventory investment ensures uninterrupted supply of inputs to the producer, and with enough stock of raw material, the producer can avoid the risk of day-to-day purchase from the market. And the stock of finished goods is important because it enables the producer to meet the potential demand for their product. So this is the importance of inventory investment. Next is gross investment and net investment. Gross investment refers to the total production of capital goods during the accounting year, and it includes the goods used for the replacement of existing capital and the capital goods used as a net addition to the existing capital stock. Capital goods used for the replacement of existing capital stock refers to depreciation, and the capital goods used as net addition to the existing capital stock can be termed as net investment. So when we add back depreciation to net investment, it will be termed as gross investment, and when we deduct depreciation out of gross investment, then we can calculate net investment. So what is the significance or importance of net investment? Net investment raises the stock of capital in the economy. It helps to generate the employment opportunities in the market, and net investment is a net rise in production capacity of the economy. So it helps to accelerate the growth rate of the economy. And next is the difference between gross investment and net investment. So gross investment includes expenditure by producer on purchase of new asset as well as expenditure on the replacement of existing stock, whereas net investment only includes the expenditure on the purchase of new assets. Gross investment includes replacement investment also, but these are not included when we study net investment. Gross investment does not shows net addition to the existing capital stock, whereas net investment shows the net addition to the existing capital stock. So these were the points of differentiation between gross investment and net investment. Next topic is concept of depreciation. So depreciation is the permanent decrease in the value of fixed asset due to wear and tear, accidental damages and expected obsolescence. So when producer uses fixed assets, and due to the use of fixed assets, its value decreases. So that reduction in value will be termed as a depreciation. And the value of assets also decreases when they become obsolete due to change in technology or change in demand. It will be termed as expected obsolescence. Depreciation is also known as consumption of fixed assets, because due to the depreciation, fixed assets need to be replaced from time to time. So that is why depreciation is termed as a consumption of a fixed asset. So to replace fixed assets, producer require funds, and provision for the funds is made on annual basis to provide or to replace these assets. So what is the significance of these funds? So depreciation reserve fund is a fund to replace the worn out fixed assets. It fulfills the need of replacement investment, and lack of depreciation reserve will amount to lack of replacement investments, and accordingly overall investment in the economy will decreases, and with decrease in investment the output will also decrease, and the decrease in output will affect the decrease in level of income and employment, and it will slow down the economic growth. So with the lack of depreciation reserves fund, the economic growth of the country is also affected. Next is expected and unexpected obsolescence. So loss of value of fixed asset when these becomes obsolete or outdated due to change in technology. So it will be termed as expected obsolescence. And loss of value of fixed assets, when the assets became obsolete due to change in demand, then it will also be termed as expected obsolescence. So expected obsolescence is of basically two kinds: obsolescence due to change in technology and obsolescence due to change in demand. And unexpected obsolescence occurs due to natural calamities and fall in market value of the fixed assets when there is economic recession. Suppose due to fire or flood, the fixed assets got some kind of damage, then the reduction of value due to that reason will be termed as unexpected obsolescence. So next is the difference between expected obsolescence and unexpected obsolescence. Expected obsolescence refers to a fall in the value of fixed asset due to change in technology or due to change in demand, whereas unexpected obsolescence refers to fall in the value of fixed asset due to natural calamities or economic recessions. Expected obsolescence is a part of depreciation, whereas unexpected obsolescence is a loss for the company. Expected obsolescence is managed through depreciation reserves funds, whereas unexpected obsolescence is managed through insurance of fixed assets. Means unexpected obsolescence can be managed by taking insurance policy against the fixed assets of the company. And next is the difference between consumption of fixed and capital loss. Consumption of fixed capital. It refers to the loss of value of fixed assets while these are being continuously used in the process of production. So when fixed assets are used in the process of production for the manufacturing of goods, then the value of those fixed assets decreases, and that decrease in value of fixed asset will be termed as consumption of fixed assets, whereas capital loss refers to the loss of value of fixed asset while these are not in use. Means loss of asset due to natural calamities like flood, fire, earthquake, it will be an example of capital loss. So consumption of fixed capital is a loss due to normal wear and tear, accidental damage and expected obsolescence, whereas capital loss is a loss due to natural calamities like earthquake, flood, fire, and fall in the market value of asset during periods of economic recession. Like consumption of fixed asset can be managed through depreciation reserve fund, whereas capital loss can be managed by taking insurance policy of fixed assets. And next is the concept of stocks and flow. So stock is a quantity measured at a particular point of time. Means it is that quantity of a product which is measured on a specific point of time. Like on January 1st, 2019, there may be rupees 1000 in your bank account, or there may be a balance of rupees 5 lakh on next day. So all such values are stock values, as these are measured at a specific point of time, whereas flow means a flow is a quantity measured over a specific period of time. Means flow is time dimensional. Like you may be getting rupees 1000 per month as pocket allowances, or you may be spending rupees 20 in the canteen. So this is the flow concept. So next is the difference between stock and flow. So stock refers to the value of a variable at a particular point of time, and flow refers to the value of a variable during a period of time. Stock is not time dimensional, but flow is a time dimensional. And stock impacts the flow. Greater the stock of capital, greater is the flow of goods and services. And flow also impacts the stock. Greater the flow of income, greater is the stock of wealth with the people. And examples of stock are wheat stored in the godown, population of a country are some of the examples of stock. Whereas sales of rice, capital formation, expenditure of money are flow concepts. Means stock and flow both are interdependent, means they both depends upon each other. Higher the value of stock, higher will be the flow, and higher the flow, higher will be the stock of goods. The next topic is 4 sectors of the economy. So from the macro point of view, economy is often divided into 4 sectors. First one is household sector. Household sector includes consumers of goods and services. Household are the owners of factors of production. Factors of production are those factors which are used for the production of goods and services, like land, labor, capital, etc. Second one is producer sector. Producer sector includes all production units in the economy. So for the production of goods and services, these firms purchases factors of production from the household. Next is government sector. Government sector includes government as a welfare agency and government as a producer. Government as a welfare agency performs such welfare functions as of law and order and defense. And the last one is external sector. In external sector, all the activities related to export and import of goods and services are included. And then next is intersectoral flow. So each sector of the economy depends on other in one way or the other way. Like household sector depends on producer sector for the production of or the supply of goods and services, and producer sector again depends on household sector for the supply of factors of production like land, labor, etc. And the government sector depends on producer sector and household sector for its tax and non-tax revenues, and producer and household sector depend on government for its administrative services besides law and order. So intersectoral independence leads to intersectoral flows, either in the form of goods or services or in the form of money. So intersectoral flows in the form of goods and services will be termed as real flow, and intersectoral flow in the form of money will be termed as money flow. So first one is real flow. Real flow refers to the flow of goods and services among different sectors of the society. Flow of factor services from household sector to the producer sector, or flow of goods and services from producer sector to household sector is an example of real flow. Next is money flow. Money flow means the flow of money across different sectors of the economy. So flow of factor payments by the producer sector to the household sector, and flow of money from household sector to the producer sector is an example of money flow. So next is the circular flow of money. So in every economy, three types of activities never stops. First one is production of goods and services. Second one is income generation, and the last one is expenditure. In fact, these activities are the lifeline of any economy. It is very difficult to identify the beginning and end points of these activities. So production, income and expenditures are flow variables. So these have been in existence like a circle without the beginning and end of these points. Circular flow means the circularity of the flow of production, income and expenditure in an economy. So accordingly, there are three phases of circular flow. First one is phase of production. So production refers to the value addition in the commodity. For example, when a wood worth rupees 5,000 is converted into chairs worth rupees 10,000, there is value addition of 5,000 in wood. So it will be termed as production. So the production sector purchase factors of production from households, who are the owners of those factors like labor, land and capital. And the factor inputs are used with non-factor inputs for the production of goods and services. Goods and services are produced for the satisfaction of human wants. And as we know, there is no end to human wants. Accordingly, there is no end to the process of production. Next is phase of income generation. So for rendering their factor services to the producer, the household sector get factor payments in the form of income, like rent for their land, interest for their capital and wages for their laborers. So from the viewpoint of household, these are factor income. Thus, in phase 2 of circular flow, there is generation of income as a consequences of production of goods and services in phase 1. So now the value addition is converted into factor income. And the last one is phase of disposition. So all the income earned by household sector is spent on the purchase of final goods and services. When household buy the final goods, it will be termed as consumption expenditure. When producer purchase these goods and services, it will be treated as investment expenditure. So consumption expenditure and investment expenditure generate demand for goods and services, and the demand for goods and services generate income level. So it generates income. So the flow will continue. That is why it will be termed as circular flow of income. So what are the assumptions of the model? There are only two sectors in the economy, and the two sectors are household sector and producer sector. And the household sector spend their income so that there are no savings. The domestic economy is a closed economy, and in case of closed economy there are only two sectors and there is no export and imports. There is no government in the domestic economy. So these are the observations related to assumptions of the model. Next one is observation. So factor payments by firms will be equal to value addition by the firm. So value addition is converted into factor incomes. Next one is total production of goods and services by firm will be equal to total expenditure on goods and services by the household sector. So all the income is converted into expenditure on goods and services, and the value addition is equal to income generated, expenditure on goods and services. So the triple identity concept will be fulfilled. Next is the significance of circular flow model. So the study of circular flow of income is important due to the following reasons. First one is estimation of national income. So circular flow model facilitates the estimation of national income. As we know, national income is the sum total of factor incomes flowing from producer to household. It may also be defined as the market value of all the goods and services produced in the economy. So the concept of circular flow helps in the estimation of national income. Next, second one is knowledge of intersectoral independence. Circular flow model helps to understand interdependence among different sectors of the economy. So through circular flow, we can learn how consumers are dependent on producer and producers are dependent on the household sector. So these were the points due to which circular flow model is important.